my fellow Americans. If you think you know politics, think again. I'm Michael Cohen, and every week on When You Know, we're pulling back the curtain on power, politics, media, and the people making headlines. On my new WABC radio show, you'll hear conversations from names that you know. People like Jerry Falwell Jr., Anthony Scaramucci, Alan Dershowitz, and many, many more. Maybe, just maybe, we'll even hear from the president. No scripts, no spin, just real conversations with people who were in the room where it happened. And trust me, we've got some very big surprises coming. Look, I've spent years at the center of politics, controversy, and power. I know the players, I know the stories, and now I'm bringing you inside. When You Know, Sundays at 5 p.m. on WABC Radio, and When You Know Unleashed, wherever you get your podcasts. Because with me, you never know who's going to show up.
Hey, it's Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. Now, I was looking for fun ways to tell you that Mint's offer of unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month is back. So I thought it would be fun if we made $15 bills. But it turns out that's very illegal. So there goes my big idea for the commercial. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for 12-month plan required. $15 per month equivalent. Taxes and fees extra. Initial plan term only. Greater than 50 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. See terms.
This morning, I am excited to be joined by Alex Tarascio from Signal. Alex, good morning. Thanks for joining us.
Morning, Sean. Happy to be here.
So I'm you and your colleagues, when you come out of the field every month with the latest national voter data, I'm always excited to see not just things where they are, but the beauty of polling, it's where things were. Because the idea is not just a snapshot, but I always tell people, and I'm sure I stole this from somebody brilliant, is polling is a snapshot. So if you look at two cars going down the highway, you see two cars, you don't know which one is maybe overtaking the other one, one's falling back. So it's context matters. So let's start the conversation there, Alex. Where are things in terms of the two parties when it comes to where we are now and where we were a month or so ago?
So a couple of things. The very first thing that I look at whenever we get any pullback from the field is where the generic ballot is. That's the top line, most interesting figure that most people will cite. One thing about this poll, it's going to be the top line. And so that one shows this month, the Democratic candidate, if you were going to vote for a generic member of Congress, is it a Republican or a Democrat? 49.9%, round up to 50 here, are going to vote for the Democratic candidate compared to 43.8% for the Republican. So we always round up. That's a 6-point gap. That matches about as big of a gap as we have seen. November was the biggest. This is about as big as November. And so it's a good result for the Democrats. This is mostly a reflection of Republican voters not consolidating. The Democratic vote share of that congressional ballot has fluctuated between no lower than 47%, usually 48 or 49, and today 49.9. Their voters have been pretty consistent that they're going to show up. They're strongly voting for a Democrat. They're decided. There's not a lot of uncertainty there. The Republican voters are a different story. There's been a ton of fluctuation, and right now 43.8, it's like a 0.1% drop compared to June. And so not a ton has changed for the Republicans that are confirmed voting for the Republican candidate. What has changed is a drop and a dip in the undecided voters. And so voters are starting to get off the sidelines and make a choice, and then they're hardening within their respective coalitions, going from saying I'm maybe going to vote Republican or Democrat to I am definitely going to vote Democrat or Republican. And the Democrats have an advantage on that intensity gap at the moment.
Okay, so when you said that it's the greatest since November, that would suggest that after November, things started getting better for a generic Republican and now maybe getting worse.
So in November, that was at the height of the government shutdown. That was where we recorded the biggest gap between a generic Democrat and generic Republican, 6.1. And right now we've about matched that. And so the Republicans were a little bit closer to the Democrats in June. I think that February was a high point. After the war started in Iran, we started to see some drifting. That drifting I attribute primarily to the Republican coalition being unhappy. And they're unhappy about gas prices. They're unhappy about what a war overseas means about the priorities at home. It's not necessarily that the war is touching them directly, but it is that the government is focused on something other than their top priority. And so this is actually the next number that I look at every time we get a poll back, is to see what are American priorities right now. And this month it is inflation and the economy. That's almost always the number one, though it actually dipped in May, or compared to May. We were at 26% of the electorate said that inflation was the top issue. That's usually bad for the party in power because it means they're thinking about it a lot. Right now it's dipped to 22%. So that's a good thing. A range of other issues split between illegal immigration, government spending, healthcare, Social Security, threats to democracy. That's the favorite Democratic issue, which basically is a stand-in for being upset about Donald Trump. These are the people that stand outside in bridges with signs in Virginia, where I live. And so it's a dispersion of different top priority issues.
All right, so let's go back to that number one issue, inflation in the economy. I tell people on my nightly program, almost nightly, and on the huddle that I do in the morning, my gauge, and I don't think I'm that off from a lot of voters, is I get my coffee in the morning, I take a walk, and it's a gas station, and I always look up. And for a while, I was getting nervous because that price was going up. And my view has always been that gas is the number one thing for consumers because you see it every day. You may not buy gas every day, but you drive by a gas station, you get that feeling of like, wow, here's, things are either going up or they're going down. And for a while, as I said, Alex, it was going up, up, up. And I was like, oh boy, this is not good. It's gone down, down, down. I mean, a couple weeks ago, and I literally mean this, like a couple weeks ago, it was at, $4 and change. Last week, it was dipped under $3.50. So if we had a crystal ball and we looked at Signal's poll in a month from now, would you expect that number to go down in terms of inflation economy? People were saying, okay, I feel better about that.
Get ready, Staten Island.
The Ferry Hawks are back at SIUH Community Park July 7th to the 12th for a 6-game series against the High Point Rockers. Tonight, first pitch is at 6:30. It's Thirsty Thursday with $5 Bud and Bud Light Drafts. Friday, July 10th, first pitch is at 7 p.m. May the Force be with you on Star Wars Night with post-game kids glow around the bases with special lightsaber training packs.
Visit ferryhawks.com now to lock in your seats.
I would, but I don't know that I'd bet my life on it. We did ask about the gas price burden in July versus June as well. And so the number of people that we asked this question, over the past few months, how would you describe the impact of gas prices on your family's budget? So in June, 28% of people said a major financial strain. In July, 32%. And so it's an increase in the number of people who say that gas is a major strain on them. That is more concentrated with people in rural America. That's about 10% higher than the total, which makes sense.
Well, wait, so let's just break but let's break that down. Then those are probably Republican voters, right? If you're living out in rural America, that's definitely more proportionally conservative Republican Trump, right?
They are more proportionally conservative Republican Trump. We have 4 geographic options. And so rural Americans make up about 10% of likely voters versus small town voters. They make up 17%. So in total, usually people combine those two things. And so typically it's about a quarter of the electorate, 27% in this case. The rural voter segment has been one of the most volatile on the congressional generic ballot. And so that 10% of people who consider themselves truly rural, yes, they do lean Republican, but they have crossed, meaning at times more of them have been voting for a congressional generic Democrat in the past 3, 4, 5 months versus like small town, that's pretty steady. And so that's
okay. So then, but then, Alex, let's go back to the proposition that I put forward. If I'm rural, if I care about gas because it affects, I have to commute, I have to go further. Maybe I'm a farmer or rancher or whatever. Then explain to me why. I don't mean, I know you might not want to bet your life on it. I get that, but why wouldn't you feel more confident then? Explain to me, because I got to believe I've watched that price go down for the last couple of weeks. So if we go back into the field with Signal in a month from now and I have you back on and that gas price has now fallen from, let's call it the low 4s down to, $3.40, $3.30, why wouldn't you expect that to translate into a positive outcome for Republican candidates?
People's impression about gas prices, they absolutely are motivated by what they see every day. But those impressions tend to be sticky. over time? Because I see the same prices you do. Everybody who drives a car in America, we see 150-point font of gas prices. I saw it hit $5 for the unleaded around my area. We don't have crazy high taxes, at least not yet, till Spanberger changes things. And I'd never seen it go that high. But now in July, it has gotten better. And yet, in our July poll, people responded more negatively compared to June, when it was certainly worse. And
why?
so
What? I don't get that. Like, what do you?
impression.
Is there something? I get it. Like, maybe it's a lagging indicator. Like, I don't fully appreciate. I'm worried. Maybe I think it's going to go back up because there's still conflict in the Strait of Hormuz. Like, is there anything? And I'm asking you to speculate here. But it does. Like, why is there a disconnect? If the prices are dropping, why aren't people saying, "Good, I see it"?
I think economic questions are tricky. Well, first, to answer your, at some point, yes, it will go down. At some point, there will be people that say gas prices are less of a strain. Is it next month? Possibly. That's a decent bet. The month after, much more likely.
Okay.
Economic questions like gas prices, they can really dovetail with people's impression of the president, of what the president is doing. People see gas prices, they think Iran, they think, are we still at war? And I guess as of this morning, the answer is still yes. And so some of this is a disapproval on what the country is doing. And we see that hitting harder in rural America, which is a traditional Republican constituency. They're unhappy. And so that's part of the slippage on the generic ballot.
Okay, so play this forward, what you just said. Maybe not in August, but you said maybe the month after. That's September, for those of us without a calendar. And that's when people are going to start to potentially early vote. So playing the math out on the calendar as we just did, is that good for the Republicans? Because when people will ultimately be making a decision to vote, this might start to trickle up.
I think so. I have seen really a lot of steadiness in this election so far. The campaign hasn't really started, and when it does, then we're going to see those undecideds get off the sidelines. Most of those people are swing voters, and those who do ultimately decide to vote, I think many of them are going to decide to vote for Republican. And so we're seeing the Democratic, what I believe is a ceiling. Now, they have a pretty good ceiling. They're at 50% right now. I don't think that the final is going to be, Republicans at 44, but the task at hand is convincing these lapsed voters who are on the sidelines for different reasons. And these are likely voters, so they're not people who would otherwise not be voting. We need to convince them that we have something worth selling.
Okay, and that gets to another point that you made a minute ago that I think needs to get completely blown up, which is this. In the poll that you guys did at Signal, it says Democratic turnout intensity leads by 12 points on extremely motivated voters, while swing voters just sit at 31%. Extremely motivated. That means the Dems are fired up, right? They're pissed. They want to get out there and they vote. That's a concern, isn't it, if you're a Republican?
It's a concern if you're a Republican and, frankly, if you're a certain kind of Democrat. And so with the Democratic Party, they have something like the Tea Party 2010 era energy right now. The voters are extremely fired up, and that energy is going to go somewhere. And if it's going to go toward a Mamdani, then and that Mamdani is competent, then great. Those voters are going to be really happy. If it's going to go to somebody like a Plattner and they implode, kind of like a Sharon Engel or a Christine O'Donnell, although they made it to the election in 2010, then those voters are going to be extremely unhappy, and they're going to take it out on the Democratic leadership. And so there is some warning signs here for both parties. The worst sign is for the Republican Party because they're the party in power. And if voters want to punish somebody, they're mostly going to punish the party in power. But this does not mean that voters are thrilled about the Democratic establishment leadership. They want an alternative, and they want somebody who's going to give them something new. And so I see that the insurgent wing of the Democratic Party is definitely reaping the benefits of this national mood right now.
So I'm looking at the memo that you guys put out that kind of highlights what came out of your national survey at Signal. This is what kind of underscores what you just said. Favorability for both parties fell 4 points since last month, and Republicans in Congress recorded their worst image since 2024, driven heavily by Trump Republicans at negative 15 favorability and traditional Democrats. The thing that I found fascinating was they're basically saying pox on both your houses, but their favorability of someone like Mamdani is actually becoming more appealing.
Yeah, he's something new. He's something different. Even among independents, people like him.
I don't know. I like new things. You probably like new things, but I don't like crazy things. I don't understand. I mean, like, what is it like about him? Every time this guy opens his mouth, I think to myself, you've got to be kidding me. So what is it that they just, because he's new, because he's anti-establishment? What is Mandami like? I found his 4th of July comments insulting and repulsive.
So he is, I don't want to overstate it. He is a dead even favorability. And so almost as many people like him as dislike him. He's 2 points underwater compared to the Democrats in Congress, the establishment Democrats. They're vastly more underwater. So with independents, it's 35 points. Independents are tied on Mamdani. And so it's not exactly a partisan thing. People want someone who's going to try something new because they don't see the same old tactics working. Voters can be quite agnostic about ideology, about process, about rules. They want to see results. And they don't want to hear about should or shouldn't you get rid of the filibuster. That's in the news a lot. They don't really want to hear about tactics. They want to know that the prices are going down. They want to know that college isn't going to cost them a leg. They want to know that they can buy a house. That's fundamentally what voters want. How they get there, that's for the politicians to figure out. And if Mamdani can say that and deliver with a smile on his face, I don't think he'll be able to, then that will be more than just empty promises from Chuck Schumer.
You know, it's a funny thing. I just tell politicians when I talk to them or do like some kind of training, you know, when like the repairman comes to your house and you're like, hey, my cable's out. Can you fix it? And the guy sits there and gives you, look, the coaxial is going through the line and we're trying to, it's like, dude, I don't care. Like, just tell me, can you get it done? Can you get the cable back on? Can you fix it? I feel like politicians should fall into the same thing. You ask them a question, what are you doing for housing prices? And they'll be like, look, the Senate has failed to move on HR 14, which we passed, and we're waiting for the motion to recommit. It's like, dude, tell me what you're doing to fix the problem. Don't give me a bunch of like legislative gobbledygook and Washington speak.
There certainly is that. Voters tend not to reward politicians too much, unfortunately, for success. They always will move on to another problem. And so touting successes on something like lowering housing prices, because there really have been successes, if that turns into the collapse of pricing, then you're going to have upset landlords, and there's just going to be another problem. That's the reward, unfortunately. And every president has discovered that. Biden discovered that. Trump is discovering that. And so being focused on the same problems that the voters are focused on, being matched with what they think the top priority is the key to making sure that as a politician, you don't look out of touch. And if you're ever too far out, then you do run that risk.
So, Alex, one of the things that was interesting to me is that there are certain demographics who are moving away from Republicans and towards the Mandami types, including women, rural voters, and suburban voters. Is there anything that you read into that?
Suburban voters are an interesting group. That's 50% of America, 52% of America. It's a massive group. And that identity, if you have a picture in your head of what that person is, you should probably get rid of that picture because it's so diverse and has changed so much over time that it's simply too big. But the flip side of that is that suburban voters, they are a little bit wealthier. They live outside the cities, obviously. And they are going more towards these Mamdani types. I don't read that as an ideological bent, but they are more socialist curious than they would have been in the past. This isn't, they want solutions. If somebody can give them a good solution that sounds believable, then they will go toward them. The rural voters is a bigger problem, I think, for Republicans because they have a predisposition to be on the right. And their volatility that I see in many different polls we've run over the past few months is a sign that they don't think that Washington is on their side right now. They don't think that Washington shares the same view of what the biggest problems are that they do. And whether it's gas prices, whether it's the war or something else, I think it's a really big problem for Republicans because they need those voters.
I want to throw a couple nuggets out from the poll that I thought might not get the same amount of attention politically. There's one that I thought was fascinating. You asked people about their alcohol consumption. 38% said they're drinking less than a year ago. That's interesting. I mean, I just find that pattern fascinating.
And 18 to 29-year-olds as well. Those should be the people who are drinking the most, and even they are, underwater. It isn't. Maybe that's the wrong metaphor to use. If they were underwater, they'd be drinking more. But more of them say that they are drinking less than who say they are drinking more. The reasons, though, are actually kind of interesting. And so, from an industry point of view, I don't work for the alcohol beverage industry, but if anybody's listening that wants to know about this, then listen. The reason why older Americans are drinking less is not down to cost or choice or flavors, because we asked questions about what would make you drink more, and more older voters simply said nothing. And so whether that's health or maybe they're abstaining, I can't deduce that from the nothing. But for those younger voters, for 18 to 29s, only 20% of them or so said that nothing would make them drink more. And so that's more of a cost factor. And so it's not necessarily just health, or they want to have their beach bod, white boy summer, whatever. They do think that costs are too high and that lower costs would make them go drink more. And if you've gone to the bars lately, I used to be able to find a $5 beer here in D.C. I don't think that's possible anymore. And so those costs really have gone up a lot for this segment that is less able to absorb them.
So unlike older voters who just maybe they're on a GLP-1, maybe they care about health, maybe they care about longevity and wellness, the younger voters, the industry could get them back just by lowering prices.
I think that they could, between prices, between choices, between flavors, that there's certainly more of an opening for those younger voters. And it's funny that you mentioned GLP-1s. We have some data that is going to come out in the near future. It's not out today, but a huge proportion of the American electorate is on GLP-1s. And it's one of those like undercurrents to how our society is changing, along with screen usage, along with more people abstaining, that we were really curious about. And so that's why we're asking some questions about how many people use it, what do they use it for, what do they think about morally, and the kinds of people who are using them may surprise you. They tend to be a little bit older than you might expect. So
do you have that data and you haven't put it out, or you're going to get that data?
Oh, no, we have that data and we haven't put it out, but I would love to share it with you as soon as we're releasing.
Oh, I'd love to. You tell me. I'd love to. I think that's fascinating. And obviously it has massive, it's not just the health piece, but it has massive economic impact. So, Alex, I'll definitely have you back. So anyway, thanks to everyone at Signal for always coming to us and sharing this. Alex Tarascio, thank you so much for sharing your insights with us.